Pat Sajak, and I want to welcome you to Mount Vernon. You know, I've had the pleasure of traveling to all 50 states of this great country, but if there's one place that really is a home to all of us, this is it. Some 80 million people have walked through those doors and seen one of the most authentic historic homes in America. George Washington once said that no estate in the United America is more pleasantly situated than this. As we all know, Washington never told a lie. I hope you plan to spend most of your day at Mount Vernon because Washington's estate reflects his true personality. Washington's mansion, which he expanded several times, is the crown jewel of Mount Vernon. But there are 11 other structures which date to Washington's lifetime, including the stables, smokehouse, washhouse, and the spinning house. And don't miss the large brick building that housed slaves on one side and tropical plants on the other. Other highlights include the upper garden, where flowers reign supreme, and the lower garden, where vegetables, herbs, and grapevines are beautifully blended, and the fruit garden and nursery with their peaches, pears, and, yes, cherry trees. Although it's a bit of a walk, Washington's tomb is a must-see experience. A few yards away is the Serene Slave Memorial, a modern tribute to the slaves and free blacks who toiled on the Mount Vernon estate. Further down the hillside is the Potomac River itself. It's hard to believe, but it was so full of herring in the 18th century that Washington's men could net 1.5 million fish in just a 6-week season. Depending on the season, you can take a quick spin on the Potomac. The views of the mansion are spectacular. The George Washington Pioneer Farmer site really brings history to life. Costumed interpreters plant and harvest crops. And you'll see one of Washington's best inventions, a treading barn that revolutionized the processing of wheat. Those who are in as good physical shape as George Washington might like to take the forest trail to learn more about the plants and animals that called Mount Vernon home. Others might like to take advantage of what's called the motorized carriage. Be sure to save time for the new Donald W. Reynolds Museum and Education Center, featuring 3 theaters, 23 galleries, and 9 video presentations that cover every exciting chapter in Washington's amazing life. And in the midst of it all, you'll find the most famous dentures in American history. George Washington was an astute businessman, and apparently Martha Washington was a pretty enthusiastic shopper. In just 1 year, she purchased no less than 20 different hats and a dozen fancy fans, so don't hesitate to follow in her footsteps. There's a small shop in the historic area and a much larger shop at the Mount Vernon Inn complex, where you'll also find the food court and the charming Mount Vernon Inn. Just between you and me, the peanut and chestnut soup and the old-fashioned bread pudding are pretty terrific. When you finally get back to your car or bus or carriage, there's still more. Just head down Route 235 for 3 miles and you'll come to General Washington's cutting-edge grist mill and completely restored distillery. In fact, we think Washington had the largest whiskey distillery in America. The mill and the distillery are both fully functional, but, sorry, there are no free samples. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can I possibly experience all of Mount Vernon in just a few hours? The simple explanation is that not everyone can. Instead, they plan a return trip, which has another big advantage. Mount Vernon really changes from season to season. It truly is a living, breathing plantation. So sit back and relax for the next 18 minutes in the Ford Orientation Center. You'll need to conserve your energy for the adventures that lie ahead. George Washington really was a remarkable man, and I think you'll discover that for yourself over the next few hours. Thanks for coming, and enjoy yourself.
As George Washington's lifelong friend, I, James Craig, Surgeon General of the Continental Army, record this story as one among many attesting to his greatness. Excellency, I did not expect to see you this night.
I'm mulling something over, James. And it needs I take stock.
Well, this way. The men will be very glad to see you.
Gentlemen, how many have we?
All men, rank and file, sir. 10,104.
Of which almost 6,000 are too ill to depend upon.
Add 4 regiments from the Northern Army. Just arrived. Cadwalader brings perhaps another 1,800.
Most beaten down by cold or disease. In short, General, a very thin force.
Thick enough for me. War Council, gentlemen. My quarters within the hour.
Yes, Your Excellency. Yes, indeed.
Dr. Craig, I need to see the men.
Sir.
A war council. But we're settled in winter quarters.
As are the Brits, laddie. And their hessian hired hands. But better time to tan their hides.
Đi chậm chậm thôi, trời ơi em không thấy ma đâu trơn à.
The world should not expect more. For what we shared, dreams that was always at home through those first years of marriage at Mount Vernon. There was always so much to be done, at least for some. Not as many visitors passed through our gate back then. We were quite a contented little family, and Mount Vernon was our private paradise. I remember a letter you wrote to a friend in which you clearly agreed.
I am now fixed at this seat with an agreeable consort for life, and hope to find more happiness than I ever experienced in the wide, bustling world. Keep your eyes closed.
To be sure, there were times in the family life almost got the better of you. Somehow, I always knew how to soothe the situation. And the years raced by so quickly. We enjoyed them all. Did we not? But we also endured more than our share of pain. I did not go to your funeral, but I could plainly hear everything from upstairs. I locked our chamber door, never to sleep again in the bed we shared. So many years together, so many joys, and so many trials. Through it all, I was determined to be happy, for I had learned from experience that the greater part of our happiness or misery depends upon our dispositions and not upon our circumstances. And I was happy, dear George. Always happy with you by my side.
Hey, that's your area of expertise. That's crazy.
It is 1775, and the long simmering rebellion has burst out into open warfare. The Americans, the rebels, have the British Army surrounded at Boston. General George Washington, appointed by Congress to lead the Continental Army, rides to the front lines. He finds his ranks filled with farmers, shopkeepers, and laborers. Not only are they inexperienced and undisciplined, but they also lack heavy guns and gunpowder. Though he is one of the most experienced officers in the colonies, Washington has never commanded a large army. And it's been 16 years since he was last in a battle. Now, he faces one of the most capable armies in the world. The British Army occupies a strong position within Boston. To drive the Redcoats from the city will require a new and audacious plan. The key to the British position is Boston Harbor and the ships that supply the Crown's army. What if their supplies, their lifeline, could be threatened? Washington realizes that if he can occupy Dorchester Heights to the south, he can bring down cannon fire on the harbor and its shipping. But where to get the guns? Washington orders Colonel Henry Knox to bring 50 artillery pieces from Fort Ticonderoga. In one of the great feats of the war, his men hauled a cannon 300 miles over rugged terrain to Boston in just 2 months. The guns are quickly put to use as Washington unleashes 3 nights of bombardment upon the British lines. But it was just a diversion, as the Americans secretly moved to fortify Dorchester Heights. Under cover of darkness, 2,000 men worked to build a massive fort on the high ground. Confronted at dawn by Washington's heavy guns, battered by sleet and high winds, Washington's boats struggled across in the face of huge chunks of river ice. They make it to New Jersey without the loss of a man, but they are now 3 hours behind schedule. Worse, the other 2 columns failed to cross. His plan has fallen apart. Not surprised, the most decisive victories of the war. But how to capitalize on the victory? Many of Washington's best soldiers are nearing the end of their tours of duty, and the British are already plotting their revenge. To keep his army from disintegrating, Washington appeals to his soldiers' patriotism. He reminds them of the glorious cause and reinforces their patriotism with cold, hard cash. Responding to their general's appeal, the army once more sets off to confront the British. On January 2nd, 1777, Lord Charles Cornwallis, the same general who had driven Washington from New Jersey 6 months earlier, leads a force of 7,000 Redcoat and Hessian soldiers down the King's Road to Trenton. These are some of the best troops in the British Army, and they are intent on destroying the American rebellion once and for all. After fighting through Washington's advance guard, Cornwallis unleashes a series of powerful frontal assaults. Each driven back with heavy casualties. Nightfall fortunately halts the slaughter. Washington's defenses hold. Unfazed, Cornwallis declares that he will cross the creek and bag the old fox in the morning. Rather than wait for the British assault, Washington agrees to a bold but risky plan. One that will allow them to retain the initiative and avoid any sense of retreat in the face of the enemy. Washington uses the cover of night to fool the British and marches his entire army around Cornwallis, driving deeper into enemy territory. When the British awake, Washington's entire army is nowhere to be found. The old fox has escaped. Just south of the town of Princeton, Washington rallies his troops and leads the final charge that buckles the British lines. Princeton is captured. Washington's third victory in just 10 days. The British, once on the verge of total victory, now retreat back to their lines around New York City, surrendering all of their summer games. Britain's arch-enemy, France, takes note of the American victories and moves closer to becoming America's ally. Washington's bold actions and stunning victories at Trenton and Princeton not only revived patriot morale, but quite simply saved the American Revolution at its bleakest hour. Raving capture, camp disease, and ferocious winter weather travels north to stay with Washington at his Valley Forge and Morristown encampments.
Thank you for your service, dear.
But even her presence is not enough to overcome his growing sense of dread. By 1781, Washington wonders how much longer his army and the new country can hold together. Writing, "Now or never, our deliverance must come." But just when all seems lost, Washington learns of a new opportunity to strike a decisive blow. His old foe, Lord Cornwallis, has led his army to the coastal village of Yorktown, Virginia, where he awaits evacuation. If the Allied Army and French Navy can converge there first, it might just be possible to capture Cornwallis's entire force. Even before it is certain that the French fleet will arrive, Washington and his allies decide to seize the opportunity.
If men were angels, no government would be necessary.
In our national legislature, voting in Congress to be according to a fair ratio of representation, as it is thus. In Pennsylvania and Massachusetts alone comprise 45%.
He could have become the general in charge of the country, but he gave it all up. He stepped away.
He converted his sword to a plowshare. He said, "I hope we shall become a granary for the world."
but in a very real way, Mount Vernon is his autobiography. What he was a leader. With the additional all-important point, he was a leader of integrity, a man of character. And other men would follow him. They would follow him as they proved through hell. And we are their beneficiaries.
He laid the foundation of a free government.
In many ways, it's a miracle that the revolution succeeded, that the country we have was created. And one of the miracles of that time was the person of George Washington.
His service, his sacrifice, his dedication, these are values that are universal, eternal, and keep us moving forward today.
Survives in our hearts.
It's the water. Oh, walk that something. Oh wait, it's a piece of wood.
Thích quay à?
Welcome to Mount Vernon. All right.
Dạ được chụp. Vô nhà thì không được chụp.
Mấy người muốn chụp không được, hình như là chụp cho.
This part of the house you're going into is a